Throughout the 1990s, British developer Rare were among the most revered in the business, as they were one of the few studios in existence that were able to deliver both critically and commercially successful titles on a regular basis. Nintendo, who was so impressed with Rare's abilities, decided to purchase a 49% stake in the company in 1994, turning them into a second-party developer exclusively for their systems. During this period, Rare were working on a large number of projects, the vast majority of which sadly never saw the light of day, the most infamous of which being Dinosaur Planet, an action-adventure title that was originally being developed for the N64. The title was designed to be the N64's final swan song, featuring fully voiced characters, intricate plot lines, and some of the biggest set pieces ever to grace the system. So large and ambitious was the title, it was reportedly going to ship on a 512MB ROM cartridge, a whopping 8 times the 64MB one used by Resident Evil 2, the largest configuration ever utilised on the system. While this amount of memory might not sound like much these days, due to the cost-prohibitive nature of large ROM carts at the time, this memory requirement was enough to raise a few eyebrows at the time. Dinosaur Planet was originally scheduled for release in the summer of 1999, however due to undisclosed difficulties during development, the game ended up being delayed for several months. To this day it is still unclear as to why this happened, however with several notable employees leaving Rare to form independent studio Free Radical during this time frame, it is plausible to suggest that staff turnover could be partially to blame. Rare, who were renowned for being elusive and camera shy, refused to reveal any more information surrounding Dinosaur Planet's development, choosing instead to wait until E3 2000, where they released several gameplay trailers to the press, detailing several intro cinematics and gameplay elements. At this event it was revealed that the game had been rescheduled for a late 2000 release, however due to unforeseen circumstances, Dinosaur Planet would forever cease to be in its current form. After studying the beta build of the game at E3, Shigeru Miyamoto made the observation that the lead protagonist of the game, called Saber, bears striking similarities to that of Fox McCloud, the main protagonist of the Starfox series of games. He then put forward the notion to Rare that instead of using Saber as the main character, they should swap him out and use Fox McCloud instead. Naturally, not wanting to upset the influential Miyamoto and their superiors, Rare obliged with the request. Thus, after several more delays and design changes, Starfox Adventures was finally released in September of 2002, skipping the N64 entirely in favour of the GameCube. While the game did receive decent reviews, several outlets severely criticised how much of a departure it took from the original Dinosaur Planet imprint, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Regarding the nature of the final game, it's entirely possible that Nintendo didn't fully anticipate the challenges that would have arisen from dramatically altering a game so late into its development cycle. Unsurprisingly, based on how unkind history has treated Starfox Adventures in recent years, Nintendo has yet to attempt a U-turn of this nature since. While the idea to retrofit the game was a cockamamie scheme in retrospect, Nintendo at the time felt that the concept was a sound bet in the circumstances. Firstly, as already established, Dinosaur Planet was already well behind schedule, practically to the point that by the time the game was going to finally hit store shelves in early 2001, the N64 platform itself would have proven to be an ineffective launch platform. Of course, with the aging hardware reaching the end of its life cycle, it did make sense to push development over to the GameCube in order to take advantage of the more powerful hardware. Secondly, with Dinosaur Planet being a new unestablished IP, Nintendo didn't want to take the risk of it being a flop, hence when Shigeru suggested to swap Saber with Fox McCloud, Nintendo felt it made perfect sense to rework the game under the established and popular moniker. This is of course where the whole plan fell to pieces, and evidence of this can be extracted from initial reactions of several hardcore fans of the series. The Starfox franchise made its debut on the Super Nintendo in 1993, and the title was renowned for its pioneering use of 3D polygon graphics on the console. The game is an on-rail shooter where you take control of Fox McCloud's ship called the Starwing, avoiding obstacles and taking down targets along the way. Its 1997 sequel, Star Fox 64, followed the same formula, albeit with improved graphics and sound design. Both titles were crammed to the rafters with secrets, and the multiple pathways added plenty of incentive for people to scope them all out. While the series doesn't rank as highly as several other Nintendo properties in terms of popularity, the game still gained a loyal following that are still active to this very day. In this context, Starfox fans had to wait an agonising 5 years for the next instalment in the series, and many were outraged at how much of a departure Starfox Adventures was from previous titles, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. What the hell is Fox doing with a magical staff? Why are there talking dinosaurs everywhere? Why are the R-Wing sections so short? And so on. These were just some of the questions raised before many started requesting refunds and exchanges, and this isn't an exaggeration. Very shortly after release, Starfox Adventures became one of the most traded in games of 2002, and due to the sheer number of copies returning into circulation, many outlets refused to accept any more copies due to the difficulty involved in reselling the game, and things only get worse from here on in. Another area of the game that frequently received criticism was the storyline, and unsurprisingly this also can be attributed to Nintendo's awkward splicing of the license. In the original Dinosaur Planet iteration of the story, brother and sister characters Saber and Crystal were tasked to track down their father Randorn, a wizard who recently disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Along the way, they were both getting embroiled in General Scale's conspiracy to kidnap both the prince and princesses of the leading dinosaur tribes on the planet, intending to use them as bargaining chips for his own twisted ends. The story itself was said to take the characters through several exotic locales and even incorporate time travel elements. Sadly, as Nintendo felt that most of these narrative threads wouldn't work in the newly implemented Starfox context, most of them ended up being cut from the final release as a result, leaving only behind fragments of the original framework, the biggest omissions being the Randor the Wizard and the royalty kidnappings plot threads. The bitter irony here is that adding Starfox elements only served to weaken the original storyline rather than improve it as Nintendo had hoped for, a classic case of one step forward and two steps backwards. In the grand scheme of things, it's not difficult to figure out why the final game ended up having so many problems. This wasn't supposed to be a Starfox game, and Nintendo really shouldn't have messed with Dinosaur Planet in the first place, especially so late into its development cycle. In conclusion, while Starfox Adventures isn't a terrible game, it's still a bit of a stretch to call it a modern classic. As an adventure title, it's considerably weaker than any of the Legend of Zelda titles, for example, and in reality it barely qualifies as a Starfox game in the circumstances. What really stings the most is that Dinosaur Planet had the potential to become something really spectacular, and had Nintendo left Rare to their devices, the game could well have turned into a success story. As it stands though, Starfox Adventures is quite a depressing tale of gaming history, as not only does it represent a game that could have been so much more, it also marked the decline of one of the most talented developers within the industry. It's no secret that as soon as Starfox Adventures was released, Rare was purchased outright by Microsoft for a whopping $375 million, thus ending one of the most fruitful video game relationships that ever existed. While under Microsoft ownership, Rare have yet to re-experience the commercial and critical success of the Nintendo years, as several of their titles post-2002 ended up either being commercial failures like Grabbed by the Ghoulies, or critically panned like Perfect Dark Zero. Being a child of the 90s, I prefer to remember Rare how they used to be, a AAA developer with formidable skill, rather than a battered husk as they are now. While it would have been great to see Rare still flying the Nintendo flag, at the same time you can't really blame Microsoft for signing them up. They wanted a talented developer to showcase their new Xbox hardware at the time. While many cite the Microsoft takeover as the culprit for Rare's downfall, it is debatable whether or not that was actually the case. Rare had already lost several key members of the team before the takeover talks even began, so it is arguable that Rare were going to fall apart regardless, but as with all speculation, we may never know the true answer. While the Rare of the past may be gone, there may still be a silver lining to this story. As recently as 2012, several clips of previously unreleased gameplay footage of Dinosaur Planet have been released on the internet, appearing to show the final beta version of the game before the Starfox transition took place. And what's even more exciting is the footage appears to have been recorded off genuine N64 hardware, suggesting evidence that the beta did actually exist on a ROM cartridge at one stage during development. At present, it is impossible to determine how many beta carts were produced or how many of them, if any, still exist, but the beta footage does mean there is a small possibility that gamers across the world may still get a chance to play Dinosaur Planet in its original form. All it would take is one generous soul to dump a copy of the elusive ROM onto the internet and thus make it available to the public. In the unlikely event that any of you happen to be in possession of this unreleased gem, then please make it happen.